grow. Fist in a velvet glove. It's got a grip on us all. It claims it's here to save our lives, but it's built to chain us to its walls. Rothbard saw through its grand disguise its lies of common good. A monopoly of violence. It rules where freedom stood. It taxes you to build its throne. It calls it duty share. But Rothbard named it what it is, theft sanctioned by despair. No contract signed, no deal was struck, yet they claim we agreed. The social contract's just a myth to justify their greed. It's not your voice, it's not your choice, it's force dressed up as law. But Rothbard's truth is breaking through, we see its fatal flaw. Anatomy of the state, rip the mask, see the chains, a parasite that feeds on us with power it sustains. It steals your wealth, it kills your dreams, it binds the human race. But liberty's the fire we light to burn it from this place. Propaganda, silver tongue, it spins a noble tale. We're here to guard, to keep you safe, but it's just an iron bar. Jail Rothbard exposed the state's true face, a gang with flags and creeds. It thrives on war, it drinks our blood to sate its endless needs. The state's no savior, it's no god, it's just a man-made curse. It grows by force, it lives by fraud, and leaves us all the worse. From kings to bureaucrats, they scheme to keep us on our knees. But Rothbard's call is loud and clear, we'll rise as we are free. It's not the will of we the people, it's a lie they sell to bind. They twist the truth, they forge the chains to cage the human mind. But markets free and hearts unbound can break their iron hold. Rothbard's vision lights the way for spirits fierce and bold. Rise up, the state's a hollow shell. Rise up, we'll send it back to hell. Anatomy of the state, rip the mask, see the chains, a parasite that feeds on us with power it sustains. It steals your wealth, it kills your dreams, it binds the human race. But liberty's the fire we light to burn it from this place. The state's a leech, it drains the land, it grows while we decay. Its welfare schemes and war machines were forced to fund their play. Rothbard's pen, a rebel sword, cuts through their grand deceit. The individual sovereign soul will never face defeat. No ruler's crown, no badge of power can claim what's ours by right. The state's a fiction, corrupt by fear that crumbles in the light. From history's page to now he wrote its conquest brutal hand. But we can build a world anew where freedom takes its stand. Anatomy of the state, rip the mask, see the chains, a parasite that feeds on us with power it sustains. It steals your wealth, it kills your dreams, it binds the human race. But liberty's the fire we light to burn it from this place. Whoa, break the chains, tear it down. Whoa, freedom's call, shake the ground. With Rothbard's truth we'll stand and fight till tyranny's undone. The state will fall and we'll be free neath liberty's rising sun.
Hello, welcome to the No Way Jose podcast. This is your host, Jose Galison. We are getting ready to start a new live reading series of Anatomy of the State. I don't know how I feel about that intro. Feel free to submit other ones in. We were a little bit scant on intro to use, but I think that's AI. I'm torn.
Yeah,
there were moments I was kind of feeling it, moments I wasn't. I don't know. It felt a little overly cheesy, felt a little cultish. I don't know how much if I like it or not, but moments that I was like, okay, all right.
It's libertarian music, man. What do you want?
Yeah.
I believe it's AI. It's homegrown idiots, and I don't know if we need to like ask those people or ask that AI if we can use it.
If there's someone out there making Rothbard content and they're really going to give me copyright problems, I will shame them.
You asked the Hopawave guy.
I did ask the Hopawave guy. I just ended up being just to be polite. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, whatever. Okay, that was fun. I'm a little torn. It was fun, and it's a fun little jaunt.
It's like Irish punk, man, something like that.
Yeah.
It's like AI Dropkick Murphys, but somehow even more gay. Which
Yeah.
I don't know how you get more gay, despite having better politics than Dropkick Murphys, but that's what that was.
Yeah, well, I don't know. We may be coming back with that one next week. We'll see. Or not next week, whenever we do another one of these. But we are going back to the source, Anatomy of the State by Murray Rothbard. This is the book for me that kind of made me take that jump, convinced me of anarchism.
Me too.
Ironically, this was book that from listening to the Part of the Problem podcast for a long period of time, him mentioning this, over time I finally read it, and that's one I was like, holy shit! The scales dropped from my eyes, and I could see the state was Satan, and so this is the book. It's also for the purposes of my podcast. That was probably my first breakout podcast, is when I had Dave Smith on the show. To discuss Anatomy of the State. That's actually probably one of my most viewed episodes. I believe that I got around almost 20,000. I know the Austin Peterson podcast beat it out, but since it's a live stream, YouTube doesn't save that one to where people can see it. If you go to my page, the Anatomy of the State is the top billed one. But so kind of going back to the OG stuff, but I still think it's great. It'll be fun to revisit it with you, Toad. We haven't really all of us together, but like you said, this has a special place in your heart as well. So we're kind of going back to the wellspring here. So any thoughts before we get into it, bud?
Well, yeah, I mean, similar to you. I mean, this was the book, or I guess it's like, what do we call it? Like a pamphlet, an essay? I mean, it's more than an essay. I don't know, a pamphlet, I guess.
Yeah.
This is the thing that, pushed me, into anarcho-capitalism from being, a right-wing libertarian, I guess, whatever. I'd been listening to Dave Smith for a bit at this point. It was probably basically like the stereotypical 6-month time span. And yeah, I mean, that was basically it. I did say I was going to, speaking of Dave Smith, I do have a story involving Dave Smith and Anatomy of the State and an assault, maybe, of some kind. I don't know exactly. Because I wasn't there to witness what actually happened. I only saw the aftermath. I went to a comedy show that was Dave Smith with Robbie the Fire in Boston. This was, I don't know, I think it was probably during the COVID years, because they were basically, I mean, Dave was obviously basically just, whatever. I'm gonna still do comedy, obviously. I was at the White Bull Tavern. Thanks to them for hosting good comedy like Dave and Robbie, because they did it multiple times. It was one of those shows. I get to the venue, and Dave was hanging out outside, obviously before the show and whatever. So he knew who I was. I talked to him for a little bit. And he goes, yeah, man, because I think it was actually between two shows. I think he had an earlier show, and I had a ticket to the late show. And he was like, yeah, man, there was this crazy, drunk dude at the first show, and he was being, totally belligerent, and he started, fighting somebody, and he got thrown out. And somebody I guess decked the guy or something. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting that story a little bit wrong, but Dave would know because he was there. I was not at that first show, but I know that it happened because I was like, oh, that's crazy. And he was like, yeah. And the dude had a copy of Anatomy of the State with him, and that copy of Anatomy of the State was there on the ground, covered in blood, right there on the sidewalk, in front of the venue.
As if it was some event, some deep event just went down, and the feds go throw out a Nazi flag real quick just to fed it up. But this one, they're like, make it an anarchist.
well, yeah. I wonder what happened to that copy of Anatomy of the State. I wonder, if somebody must have picked it up off the sidewalk. Maybe somebody was converted later that night. Maybe a homeless guy was like, "What is this? This blood-soaked pamphlet right here."
Well, many people have had that experience, and I don't know, maybe we can distill this into our live reading fashion as we do. I'm not sure if it'll have that same punch, but at the very least, who knows, maybe we'll talk some people into reading it on their own. This really is one of those books you can kind of read in a day. I mean, I don't know, I wouldn't say maybe like a couple afternoons, like a couple short readings. If you're not like a huge reader, if you're an intense reader, you can knock it out easily in like an afternoon or in an hour or two. It's not much, but I don't know. Maybe hopefully you guys get something out of this reading and our analysis as we go through. I don't know. I haven't really revisited this much, I think, since the Dave Smith episode. So it'll be interesting revisiting this stuff, seeing if it still has the same punches it had in the past. But we'll go ahead and start with it. Has this broken up into an interesting 7 chapters. The first one being what the state is not. Then we will go into what the state is. So we are defining what the state is not, and then the following chapter will be what the state is. We'll probably cover at least those two in this first part. I don't expect us to have probably more than 3 or 4 parts for this series. Should be pretty short, but hopefully this has the same effect it had on us for you guys. And I don't know, maybe you can spread it about. Because this is that one bit of literature that has this effect on a lot of people.
Yeah, and basically this is like it's like a fairly concise like just overview of like how the state operates basically, and like why this is bad and why we would be better off not having it. Essentially, like that is what it is. It's like, and I think we're in straightforward like kind of moral argument.
Yeah, and we're in a pretty unique time where I think a lot of people have kind of we've been whiplashed back and forth. And kind of just dealing with like the reality of the situation of none of these people are worth a damn. The political system's untenable, and I think a lot of people are coming to terms with this. And it's another time to remind people of like, hey, this book, these ideas. At the very least, you can build off of them and go somewhere with them. But, all right, let's go ahead and get into it. What the state is not. The state is almost universally considered an institution of social service. Some theorists venerate the state as the apotheosis of society. Others regard it as an amiable, though often inefficient, organization for achieving social ends. But almost all regard it as a necessary means for achieving the goals of mankind, a means to be ranged against the private sector, and often winning in this competition of resources. With the rise of democracy, the identification of the state with society has been redoubled, but it is common to hear sentiments expressed which violate virtually every tenet of reason and common sense, such as, "We are the government." The useful collective term "we" has enabled an ideological camouflage to be thrown over the reality of political life. If we are the government, then anything a government does to an individual is not only just and untyrannical, but also voluntary on the part of the individual concerned. If the government has incurred a huge public debt, which must be paid by taxing one group for the benefit of another, this reality of burden is obscured by saying that we owe it to ourselves. If the government conscripts a man or throws him into jail for dissident opinion, then he is doing it to himself, and therefore nothing untoward has occurred. Under this reasoning, any Jews murdered by the Nazi government were not murdered. Instead, they must have committed suicide, since they were the government, which was democratically chosen, and therefore anything the government did to them was voluntary on their part. One would not think it necessary to belabor this point, and yet the overwhelming bulk of the people hold this fallacy to a greater or lesser degree. Right out the jump, first paragraph coming in hot. What do you think? I think they kind of stunned us with a good jab right to the nose, right out the gate. It is, I think, a good way to start this out. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Rothbard kind of has a way of doing that, like using words that kind of just, he packs a punch into some of these sentences. I think he was a bit of a funny dude because he was Jewish, so they have the gift of comedy.
He's allowed to be.
Right. But yeah, I mean, he starts out basically kind of the obvious sort of like everybody, like virtually everybody assumes that we do need a government for something, even though there are some people who kind of see it as like, well, a necessary, not even really evil, but like he talks about how some people are just like, oh, that stupid, inefficient government over there, those bozos, like he's basically going to say that that's not even the way to look at it. Like they're not just an inefficient organization. Like they're actually pure evil and massively corrupt. And that is the way that you should look at it, which he's going to get to, I think more so in the next chapter. But then he goes on to, pack this punch that we just read here, where he's talking about how the government will start blurring the lines to make you think that you are the government. Like Hoppe talked about that as far as like how democracy functions. It's like, well, they make everybody think that because they're voting, they participate in this process, that anybody can kind of become a member of the government, sort of, that the government is the people, it's the government of the people, so you're all one and the same, and therefore everything the government does, like, it's justified based on that. Like, that's kind of the general way of thinking. And, he's sort of getting into the, like, the social contract type of thing again, where, like, that means that we actually, agreed to allow this to happen. We agreed to allow ourselves to be taxed by the government. And then, the government knows best or whatever, and they're going to take our money and do this with it because that's also for the benefit of the people or whatever. And he's saying that, like, that whole way of thinking is a fallacy. Yeah, and right from the jump, he's establishing that the state is not you. And to break yourself of that idea, because this is the first jump that they try to get you to buy into. All right, we must therefore emphasize that we are not the government. The government is not us. The government does not, in any accurate sense, represent the majority of the people. But even if it did, even if 70% of the people decided to murder the remaining 30%, this would still be murder and would not be voluntary suicide on the part of the slaughtered minority. No organicist metaphor, no irrelevant bromide that we are all part of one another must be permitted to obscure this basic fact. If then the state is not us, if it is not the human family getting together to decide mutual problems, if it is not a lodge meeting or country club, what is it? Briefly, the state is that organization in society which attempts to maintain a monopoly on the use of force and violence in a given territorial area. In particular, it is the only organization in society that obtains its revenue not by voluntary contribution or payment for services rendered, but by coercion, while other individuals or institutions obtain their income by production of goods and services and by the peaceful and voluntary sale of these goods and services to others. The state obtains its revenue by the use of compulsion, that is, by the use and the threat of the jailhouse and the bayonet. Having used force and violence to obtain its revenue, the state generally goes on to regulate and dictate the other actions of its individual subjects. One would think that simple observation of all states through history and over the globe would be proof enough of this assertion. But the miasma of myth has lain so long over state activity that elaboration is necessary. So just kind of laying it out plainly what this is. It is not us, but it is this thing apart from us. It is this entity that exerts coercion on the flock. Any thoughts before we move on to the next chapter? Yeah, so I mean, he makes the point that the state is really actually a minority of the population still, and they do not actually represent the majority. And what he did not say explicitly there that Hoppe will point out is that we talked about in the Hoppe book is that the members of the state will actually just work to just empower themselves, enrich themselves more and more. And they're not actually even working for the benefit of the people that elected them anyway. But he's saying that even like say that they did for whatever reason, like in like a democracy, it's still basically saying that, well, 51% of the population is allowed to say, we're going to murder the other 49% of the population or whatever. And like that would be justified like logically by saying that, well, the state is, allowed to do this because we endorsed it by like voting in these people, like the majority of the people voted for this. And he's saying that that's obviously incorrect and it's immoral. And then, he goes on to talk about how the state is a monopolistic entity that has a monopoly of force over a given territory, which we know. And that, it is enriching itself, basically. It gets all of its money through force, through taxation, through stealing from the people. versus what the private sector does, which is that the private sector actually has to provide something that the people want, actually has to provide something of quality in order to actually profit off of it. And it's all through voluntary exchange, whereas the way the government operates is the opposite of that. It is involuntary, and they're thieving from the population.
Pilfering the peasants. What the state is, man is born naked into the world and needing to use his mind to learn how to take the resources given him by nature and to transform them, for example, by investment in capital, into shapes and forms and places where the resources can be used for the satisfaction of his wants and the advancement of his standard of living. The only way by which man can do this is by the use of his mind and energy to transform resources, production, and to exchange these products for products created by others. Man has found that through the process of voluntary mutual exchange, the productivity and hence the living standards of all participants in exchange may increase enormously. The only natural course for man to survive and attain wealth, therefore, is by using his mind and energy to engage in the production and exchange process. He does this first by finding natural resources and then by transforming them, by mixing his labor with them, as Locke puts it, to make them his individual property, and then by exchanging this property for the similarly obtained property of others. The social path dictated by the requirements of man's nature, therefore, is the path of property rights and the free market of gift or exchange of such rights. Through this path, men have learned how to avoid the jungle methods of fighting over scarce resources so that A can only acquire them at the expense of B, and instead to multiply those resources enormously in peaceful and harmonious production and exchange. What we are describing here is the normal free market, the how we produce things, how we civilize the world, how we increase our station in the world, and how we create win-win situations amongst ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, he's essentially saying that's like that's the natural state of things, and that at least when man came into existence, at least there was nothing had been created yet, essentially. So man by default basically has to start creating things in order to live and survive, which means he's going to have to be working to do that. He's going to start acquiring property that way and whatever. And then once you get into a more advanced civilization or whatever, you're going to have market activity going on between a whole bunch of actors. But in the natural state, if it was a private scenario, you would still have to enter into that market. You would have to produce something of value, essentially, have a skill of some kind, do something to allow yourself to participate in that market, basically, and that is the natural state of things. Although, I mean, I would maybe push back a little bit on that and just say that I do think that there is a human tendency to want governments, which I think is what we have seen. But I don't know if that's really contradicting what he's saying here. I think he's just kind of laying out well,
he's about to lay out the other path, the path of coercion, and you're just saying that some people want that. So some people want, and by virtue of people doing that, obviously some people want that. Like, by the very fact someone's coercing someone, the person doing the coercing desires to coerce. So, but it's just the point, that these are distinctly different, means or I guess paths, essentially. And he's about to lay out the other one here as we're kind of getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here.
Yeah, and in the voluntary path, it's the way to actually justly or morally acquire property.
Yeah, and it's as me and you have done a covered hop on. It's kind of like the decivilization or civilizing. And it's kind of these are the two paths. You can either civilize to where we're kind of building up, or decivilize, which is destructive. Because it's like even in a coercive system, it's kind of it's a race to the bottom in a sense. I mean, there is the coercer who is getting a I guess maybe more of a W out of the situation, but it's a less productive system. So you're losing stuff. Whereas if you can make this a win-win for everybody, then everybody wins. Kind of rising tide, all that stuff. But yeah, all right, let's get into the other path. The great German sociologist Franz Oppenheimer pointed out that there are two mutually exclusive ways of acquiring wealth. One, the above way of production and exchange, he called the economic means. The other way is simpler in that it does not require productivity. It is the way of seizure of another's goods or services by the use of force and violence. This is the method of one-sided confiscation of theft of the property of others. This is the method which Oppenheimer termed the political means to wealth. It should be clear that the peaceful use of reason and energy in production is the natural path for man, the means for his survival and prosperity on this earth. It should be equally clear that the coercive, exploitative means is contrary to natural law. It is parasitic, for instead of adding to production, it subtracts from it. The political means siphons production off to a parasitic and destructive individual or group, and this siphoning not only subtracts from the number producing, but also lowers the producer's incentive to produce beyond his own subsistence. In the long run, the robber destroys his own subsistence by dwindling or eliminating the source of his own supply. But not only that, even in the short run, the predator is acting contrary to his own true nature as a man. Any thoughts on the other path, the destructive path, the path to ruin?
Yeah, and by the way, that is not the same Oppenheimer that built the bomb. By the
No.
way, this is a more peaceful Oppenheimer. I think that was Robert Oppenheimer, right? This is Franz Oppenheimer, whatever. But yeah, he's talking about how there are two ways of acquiring property. Basically, one is the way that we already laid out in the first part of this, or Rothbard already laid out in the first part of it, which is sort of the just acquisition of property, where you actually do that through voluntary means, you either like you homestead something that's not owned yet, basically, or you exchange for something on the market. The other way, of course, is to steal something. And of course, in order to do that, something already had to have been justly acquired or produced in the first place, which I do think he's going to talk about later. So you have to have that thing having been produced already to even start stealing it. But the other means of acquiring property that he's talking about here is through theft. So things that already exist now that have been produced, you can steal them. Any sane person should be able to see that, well, that's immoral because that's not your thing. You're stealing it. You did not justly acquire that piece of property, but that is what the government does. That is,
they're literally a moocher. They're literally providing nothing of substance here. They're just literally taking. So yeah,
right. And he does not mince words as far as that's concerned, calling them a parasite. Basically just saying that they're not only stealing things, or I guess siphoning off, stealing things, but he's talking about how they also siphon off production. So they actually make the general population less productive as well by doing that.
All right. We are now in a position to answer more fully the question, what is the state? The state, in the words of Oppenheimer, is the organization of the political means. It is the systemization of the predatory process over a given territory. For crime, at best, is sporadic and uncertain. The parasitism is ephemeral, and the coercive parasitic lifeline may be cut off at any time by the resistance of the victims. The state provides a legal, orderly, systematic, I don't know why I'm struggling with words today, channel for the predation of private property. It renders certain, secure, and relatively peaceful the lifeline of the parasitic caste in society. Since production must always precede predation, the free market is interior to the state. The state has never been created by a social contract. It has always been born in conquest and exploitation. The classic paradigm was a conquering tribe pausing in its time-honored method of looting and murdering a conquered tribe to realize that the time span of plunder would be longer and more secure, and the situation more pleasant if the conquered tribe were allowed to live and produce, with the conquerors settling among them as rulers, exacting a steady annual tribute. One method of the birth of a state may be illustrated as follows. In the hills of southern Ruritania, a bandit group manages to obtain physical control over the territory. And finally, the bandit chieftain proclaims himself king of the sovereign and independent government of South Ruritania. And if he and his men have the force to maintain this rule for a while, lo and behold, a new state has joined the family of nations, and the former bandit leaders have been transformed into the lawful nobility of the realm. So I think we have shown you what the state is not. We have shown you what it is. Any final thoughts on these two chapters, Toad?
Yeah, so I mean, he did mention the thing that I had mentioned prior to that, where that's the line that I kind of remember. Production must always precede predation. So you actually have to be able to produce something in the first place in order to even have it stolen from you. But he is also talking about how basically if there was like the willingness and or the means for the population to actually want to stop that, he's kind of alluding to the fact that they actually could like say that they've had enough of it, but I think there are a few reasons why they don't. One being the thing they already pointed out, that they like don't really see the government that way, and they consider it to be like necessary. They consider themselves to actually be part of it through the voting process and whatever. So that's going to make it so that some people don't even see the government that way, and they're not going to want to rise up against it. Another one might be that the government is, you know, a threat militarily or whatever, so it's going to be dangerous to want to rise up against it. And then he's talking about here kind of more of like the first one of those things I just said, I guess, where he's talking about how they sort of set up the situation where it's almost like they're like a peaceful predator almost, and that they're not like, I mean, although I would say even that's kind of wrong in a way. Like, I mean, I think they are kind of going out and killing people, and people just like kind of just want to, I mean, they are, and people just want to kind of ignore that fact. But he's sort of saying that, well, they kind of allow the free market to like do its thing and exist, and they allow people to work and live and have their jobs or whatever. So that's going to be, it's going to make people like less likely to rise up for that reason too. So it's like, yeah, this like weird, almost peaceful parasitism, whatever. But then, you know, I would also kind of point out that the government also really just kind of has its tentacles in like everything at this point, almost like every arm of like what is the free market. It's kind of that like, it's a private company, bro, like argument that came up all the time during COVID. And it's like, well, no, not really, because these like music venues or whatever that are all forcing you to have a vaccine passport, or they're working at the behest of the government. That's not a free market. Like, that would not happen organically. So, you know, you get into that situation where, yeah, he's talking about, yeah, the free market sort of being outside of the realm of government, and that's where you get into, you know, your agorism type of stuff and whatever. But I kind of, you know, I don't want to get into it too deeply here, but, you know, I do kind of argue that, well, what we have right now is just the government is just, they've infiltrated almost every aspect of what we consider to be the market.
Yeah.
It's almost like you kind of have to participate in that market.
Yeah. Well, I mean, today I think we accomplished a very simple thing. I considered maybe going a little bit further. We defined what the state is. I would recommend, if you disagree with that, you leave a comment. Do you think, I laid it out pretty bluntly, and I think this does... it does kind of out the jump with the gate here, kind of strips away any illusions that you would have. It kind of finds you being like, and then you're like, well, yeah. And so I don't know, hopefully maybe had that effect on a lot of you guys. If you disagree, let us know down why in the comments. But we'll be back with another episode here soon. I know this one was a really short one, but I do think it kind of is a good spot to end it. Just as what the state is not, what it is. I mean, that's how the book kind of starts. We cracked into it, and then we're really going to dive into it from here. And you can kind of tell we've got this starting point. Here we are, and we're going to dive into it. But Toad, let people know where they can find you at if they want to check you out elsewhere, see some of the other shenanigans you get into, ukulele singing, sports gambling, despite the fact you don't even actually gamble anymore. Whatever new projects you've picked up, let them know where they can find you at, and we'll go ahead and get out of here, bud.
Yeah, I mean, I should be at least. So, by the way, I'm just kind of reminded of this now because I think this is the fourth time I've been reading this. The last time I read this was like during the lockdowns, and I remember reading it at like breweries and stuff. Like, I was just like drinking way too much during the lockdowns. I remember just like pulling this thing out and reading it like while I was drinking at a brewery. I think I read the whole thing again in one sitting while I was drinking, which is probably not a good thing. But that was the last time I read this. But yeah, you can find me Learn to Toad on Twitter. Learn to Toad on Instagram. Better Off Dead, BTTOR. Probably got to change the name of that as my sports betting channel, which is on YouTube, and it's on Apple and Spotify as well. I probably should be actually putting money on this stuff because since football season has started, I've been actually really, really good in all sports. So, like, everything's been good. Baseball playoffs, hockey's off to a good start. I should just be putting money on this shit again. I won again tonight. I think I've had 1 or 2 losing days over the last, like, almost month or so at this point, which is really insane. So, yeah, I'm kind of pissed. Maybe I should just do that. And I have ukulele stuff, as you said, covered in uke on YouTube and patreon.com/learntotode. There is some bonus uke stuff there, a Spotify feed, and prioritize requests.
All right, awesome. Appreciate you joining me, bud. We'll do this again soon, and we'll keep on cracking away at the live readings. My audience keeps on requesting it. The inner core of my audience does like this stuff, and so we'll keep cracking them out. I actually have one sponsor of the show who keeps on requesting them, so that we keep on doing them, and I'm here for it. I dig it. I like touching base, kind of, I know, keep me grounded, keep a little foot in the theory
Second
land.
base.
Yeah, and but for those who want to support what I'm doing, leave a like, share, subscribe, comment, leave a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. You can find the show on Twitter. You can find it on Rumble. You can find it on YouTube. It's on all the audio podcatchers. Anywhere you can really find podcasts at, that's where it's at. But if you want to support the show in the best way you really can, go over to patreon.com/NoWayJose2020. There's also a QR code right here if you prefer to use that. That's where you can support this show. At the low level of $2, you get a whole host of perks. Give you access to early episodes. There's usually about 1 to 2 of those any given time, any given week. Keep about 4 behind the paywall any given time. Typically, I need to bump those up. I'm a little bit behind, but I'll catch up. And then also you get access to the ad-free RSS feed. You get access to Telegram, access to the pre-show, post-show, access to video chats on Already Dead. And also, I give a big shout out to my sponsors as a big thank you to everything they do, which is the highest level. I give a shout out to them every episode. I have my previous co-host who is with me right now from Tower Gang at Learn Toad, also at Abrogate D's, at ZLVRCK, at _Invisiel, Tim Tuttle, at John Gleebold, Will Bells, Delicious Blueberry Rabbit Eye Wine, big fan of the show, Torn May, at Wayne Taculus, a yellow polka dot dress, and Mark Vesabule. Again, I apologize. This episode is a lot shorter than the typical episodes, but I do think, given how this book is laid out narratively, it is appropriate to end at this spot after Defying the State. But we'll be back. The next episode should be probably more closer to an hour or so. But I look forward to cracking back into this political theory with you, brother. I will see you all again. Love you all. Leave likes, all that good stuff. We're out of here. Bye-bye.